This session is kindly sponsored by the Havilland aircraft.
So the Dash 8-400 presented to TAAG Angola Airlines is shown in a 74-passenger configuration. This aircraft features the economy class configuration that you see here and a premium section in the front. We have our bright, wide, and quiet, comfortable cabin. The reason the Dash 8-400 cabin is quiet is because of the active noise vibration suppression system. This system ensures a quieter cabin, equal and comfortable as comparable to a jet. These larger bins, compared to other conventional aircraft in the same category, will ensure that you've got two standard IATA-sized bags able to be carried on board for the passengers.
I have the pleasure of giving you the overview of the premium economy cabin. Well appointed and certainly will provide TAAG Angola Airlines passengers the utmost attention and service to those premium economy passengers. From all of us here at the Havilland Aircraft of Canada Limited, we want to wish TAAG Angola Airlines the very best and congratulations on the first delivery of the Dash 8-400. We wish you a fantastic entry into service.
Parabéns a TAAG e a Angola. É prazer fazer parte da vossa história.
Today we have from the various interventions gotten details on how our airline industry has been affected by the health crisis. At AFRA level, we have taken various initiatives to support the airline industry. One of the important initiatives was the development of a recovery plan for our members. This recovery plan is based on 9 pillars of actions on various areas, as has been presented during the Secretary General's annual report. We have heard from the CEO's roundtable recommendations and views on what airline they think that can be collaborative strategies that will be ideal for the recovery and sustainability of the industry. Some of the keywords that I have picked from the session: pragmatism, adaptability, partnership, and collaboration. The focus of this session for the next 20 minutes will be how are airlines restarting their operations and where are the revenue opportunities? What are sustainable strategies to preserve cash flow whilst operating with reduced load factors at this time of the crisis? What are the lessons to be learned from the other markets outside Africa? I will be joined by our distinguished panelists who will adequately debate on this matter. The first panelist is Mr. Rui Carreira, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of TAAG Angola Airlines and the current President of AFRA. We'll also be joined by Mr. Samir Adam, Regional VP Sales, EMEAR, the Havilland Aircraft of Canada Limited. Welcome to the session. Has been significantly impacted by the COVID pandemic. In the last 7 months has been an airline and as an OEM. How have you had to adapt to this? And this is the kind of situation we find ourselves in. I will start with Rui. Please share TAAG Angola's experience on survival.
Good afternoon, Maureen. Thank you. It's a very, very important question. We are not living happy days. Aircraft are on the ground. It has been very hard to sustain our company in these adverse environments. Destination countries declared shutdown, Angola as well, for understandable reasons, only permitting cargo and humanitarian flights. So that was what we are being done during these months before being allowed last month to operate passenger flights regularly. Notwithstanding, in a very reduced population. Our operations decreased 90%, so have decreased revenues, and fixed the costs, contained the same. Of course, we have support from the state, the only owner of the company so far. But as you can imagine, states are also facing challenges at the time. Therefore, this support is never enough. We have set a business survival plan according to 9 pillars recommended by AFRA. But again, To really survive, we must go beyond. We have to perform major structural reforms to adapt the company to the new scenario. Maureen, it's up to you.
Well, I think your sound was not coming in too clearly, but what we have gotten from your intervention is that it's not been business as usual, and you have a business survival plan in place. Could you please explain TAAG's restructuring strategy pre-COVID that saw you order the Dash 8-400 aircraft? And
Okay.
how your airline has adapted to the new operating environment with this aircraft?
Okay, on Dash 8, our strategy has 2 points. Number one, better serve our domestic network with a smaller and efficient plane for short legs. Number two, expand our regional network using the existing fleet of Boeing 737s. We strongly believe this strategy could contribute to balance any financial figures, given the economic growth of the continent and the perspectives on traffic growth between different countries at the time. So it is the adaptation. That was the key point when we said to go to purchase the Q400s.
Okay, thank you. We now move to Samir. As an OEM, what has been the impact of COVID-19 on your business, on operations over the last 7 months?
Manufacturers are equally impacted. The rest of the airline market as well. So we've seen a slowdown from a standpoint of demand from passengers for air travel, and it has an impact all the way downstream the entire system right down to the aircraft. So as a manufacturer from our side, first of all, in March, the immediate step was to protect our employees and their families. So we immediately paused production activities and then assessed what was the best way forward based on local guidelines and national guidelines for Canada. So over the next few months, we spent some time to make sure we revisit our approach to completing production. All of our customers recognized that they needed their regional aircraft for domestic connectivity and also to address the load factors. So we actually had the position of not having any cancellations, no deferrals. All of our customers actually needed the regional aircraft. So by the summer, on our side, we restarted production in a phased approach. At the same time, we also continued aircraft, but in a different way. We had a delegated delivery process that was developed and implemented to support our customers who could not travel to Canada to accept the aircraft. So we worked with them with a delegated approach to ensure that aircraft were being delivered and have continued to deliver aircraft since then regularly. In terms of how we've actually managed going forward, we continue to focus on our employees and health and safety of their families. So we are in a different way of completing the aircraft that are currently on our production line, but we continue to deliver aircraft. We have a number of aircraft that are scheduled for delivery into Africa before the end of this year already as well.
We also look at having a relationship which is more in a form of a partnership with the OEMs. Now to you, Samir, you have a considerable region that you have oversight over. What are some of the airline restart strategies you're seeing globally that can provide lessons to the carriers on the African continent?
Yes, Maureen. So you're right. We do have an ability to compare some of the different regional restart strategies. And from my perspective, we not only look after Africa, my team also looks after Middle East and Europe, Russia, and also South America. So we see some commonalities, but we also see some differences in how the different airlines are responding. Regional aircraft in all aspects are still the critical starting point. To be able to support the airline with the cost of operation to address the smaller markets that they have available today. So that means lower load factors, that perhaps less revenue opportunities, less frequencies, and in each case, the regional operation is going to be the building block to restart and recover to the original pre-COVID levels. We've seen new routes, for example, in some markets where the Dash 8 is now taking over routes that were previously flown by larger jets.
So whether they're narrow bodies or regional jets, the Dash 8 has now stepped into routes that were traditionally jets or are new markets that have been withdrawn from airlines who've either pulled back, have shrunk their operations, or are even starting to wind down. And from a statistic standpoint, we're seeing nearly 15% between all types of routes have now been allocated back to the Dash 8. So that's a significant market increase on where we are operating with some of those customers. In terms of some examples, if we take a look at Africa, for example, in Europe, LOT Polish Airlines has restored services to Budapest with Dash 8-400, and it's been a long time since they've had that connectivity on a particular route segment. But even closer to home, Jambojet is a great example of establishing a connectivity from Mombasa to Kisumu and Eldoret, which was not previously available before. So these are opportunities in a time where there is still a need for connectivity. There's still a need to ensure that there are people traveling, goods are traveling, and the markets are being reinstated in some cases, or new markets are being established. And we see similar trends in South America as well, where there's a need to address a jet is no longer profitable, and it needs to revert back to something that's economical to and viable. And as Rui said as well, and some of the other panelists in the previous discussion, states cannot continue to keep giving out aid ad infinitum. There has to be some economic actions taken. There have to be some strategies, such as using the right type of aircraft, addressing costs, focusing on revenues at a smaller segment, and use those strategies to recover and look beyond this pandemic.
Okay, thank you. From the opportunities in connectivity and new routes that you have elaborated, talk us through how the Havilland has managed to ensure the continuity of new aircraft deliveries within the region at such a challenging time.
So in the current market, as I touched on earlier, we do have to address the fact there are a number of restrictions to being able to travel and accept aircraft. At the same time, the financing market also has a certain view of how airlines should be managing their fiscal budgets in the current environment. But in terms of supporting the delivery process, so the first one would be the delegated delivery process, where we can minimize the requirement to have to travel and address quarantine procedures. That procedure is already in place, and we do have a special exemption plan in place for travelers coming into Canada. So that's working quite well. Working with third-party inspectors and the delivery process and the financiers, that has also worked quite well. And if we take a look at just using TAAG as an example, their first delivery included a number of lawyers from Hong Kong all the way across to Europe, and including the South African Council and Angolan Council, plus all of our in Canada. So a very coordinated effort to be able to get to a successful delivery. And if we look forward, we actually have deliveries to air coming up very shortly. We've just delivered the 29th and 30th Dash 8-400 to Ethiopian Airlines as well, which is a milestone, but it had to be done in this delicate scenario, in a situation where quarantines were a factor. We had to involve governments on both sides to ensure that travel could be achieved. The financing side was also an element that had to be addressed. So all of those factors really require a lot of coordination, where in the past, everybody would travel in, travel out, at the aircraft, and it would be a bit more traditional approach.
Okay. Now, regarding what you've mentioned regarding coordinated efforts, we are also very pleased as AFRA to have the Havilland joining the partnership program, and we will be happy to work with the Havilland in the coming years to support our airlines new opportunities on connectivity and on new routes. Back to you, Rui. The COVID pandemic has reset the global aviation arena. What changes do you see internationally and on the African continent?
Many changes, major changes. Leaner, efficient airlines, customers more aware or sensitive product offering, establishment of travel corridors, greater movement of cargo regionally, and focus on trade and tourism and content. Major changes. But we have to be adapted to this. Back to you, Maureen.
Thank you. Back to you, Samir. How does this new operating environment offer manufacturers and OEMs the chance to do things differently?
Thanks, Maureen. So that's a key part of how we all survive going forward. You know, we have to work together as an industry, and I think the important aspect here is first to understand that we are all in this situation together. Airlines have a different view, manufacturers have a different view, suppliers have a different view, and even the passengers have a view, but we all have to find a way forward in this environment. So the first thing from our perspective as Canada is we have increased our focus on understanding the customer in their current context. So we have to support the customer with what is happening on their side as well as what our business priorities will be, and finding that common ground to be able to move forward in the pandemic. Some of the are facing challenges due to restrictions. Some are facing challenges to limitations in their markets or reduced markets. We talk about the first presentation from ACC with Rob Watts talking about the capacity and the market shrinkage. So how does that rationalize with itself? So we have to work together. So as I was saying, the aviation sector itself is a trade, and in particular in this certain environment where we're seeing reduced trade, we're seeing movement of people, there are certain elements that we do need to focus more on. Domestic connectivity, regional connectivity, transportation of critical goods like PPE, all of those are critical factors despite a pandemic or normal circumstances anyway. So we see here as a manufacturer, our role is to help facilitate any further support in those areas where we need to be doing more market analysis, where we provide more guidance to the airlines, where the opportunities for revenue, where we need to assist in discussions with financiers, lessors, other aspects of the market. And in some cases, we're also interacting directly with governments to ensure that government is being able to support in the way they need and understand the impacts. So, you know, what is the impact of an aircraft coming in and a particular route being restarted? Or what is the impact of adjusting a delivery schedule of a larger aircraft that perhaps may or may not be as beneficial in this current environment? At the end of the day, it's a matter of restarting the system. We all have to kickstart the system with some kind of impetus, and that impetus will have to be regional aviation. It has to be connecting those 20, 30, 40, 50 passengers, moving the smaller cargo first, and working through the initiatives that people are focused on to bring back the aviation industry to what it was pre-COVID.
Thank you very much, Samir. Now, just to get a parting shot from both of you, looking at the Assembly's theme, redefining air transport for a new era, what will be your parting shot on the ingredients for successful recovery? We start with you, Rui.
Yeah, it is a very, very difficult question. We cannot predict the future. It is very, very difficult. So first of all, companies must have a strategy. The strategy first is to set a fleet to adapt to the new market environment. So we believe that our strategy to go through the parameters for cover our domestic market is a very, very good strategy, because the main concern is to reduce this time. Actually, we don't expect a big increase in traffic for obvious reasons. We already received 2 out of 6 dash 8s. In fact, so shows that this strategy is good. The airline is adapting progressively, looking for the market reaction. Honestly, we don't have no means to be more proactive, but you can be aggressive. So there are some ingredients to go forward in pandemic times. Everybody knows that pandemic, but the effect you hear, the recovery will be with a very, very difficult to predict. In for some presentations from ECC, for example, good picture how airlines have to be very, very pragmatically and very realistic.
Thank you, Rui. Samir, what's your take?
Yeah, I would actually agree with Rui. The strategy is required, or a plan. And, I've spoken to many airline CEOs in the last couple of weeks, and it's always the same theme that comes across for those who have successful strategies. So you have to have a strategic, you have to stick with that plan. Being able to be flexible is one aspect, but stick with the master plan. Know that you're looking at a target that's outside of COVID, that's 5 years out, for example, and build towards that strategy. At the same time, work with your suppliers and OEMs and the key partners, because that open communication is what's going to be the most important to ensure that everybody's working together. If we are working together, open, we understand each other's issues, we understand each other's opportunities, then we will focus on the same target, the same positive outcome.
Thank you very much. Looking at the chat, I don't see any question that has been directed to the panelists. I think now I can sum up the session. From the discussion, we've noted a few highlights. One, that strategy for airlines to adapt to the new norms, and airlines need to be more proactive. So we need to look at our business model. The situation will change, and definitely airlines will be required to reinvent themselves. Second take home is on coordinated efforts to take on new opportunities. And thirdly is that airlines and OEM suppliers and partners need to synergize their relationships. Now, just to thank our panelists for participating in this session and for contributing to our discussion. Thank you very much, Rui. Thank you very much, Samir.